Okay, so we're still finding derivatives, right? If you look at this guy right here, example number 1, this part right here. It still says find h prime of 1. That means find the derivative of h and then plug in 1. We've done that before many, many times, right? H is this guy. So h is f of x plus g of x. So the first thing we need to do is find the derivative of it. Well, f and g aren't multiplying together, aren't dividing together, they're adding together, right? They're adding two things together. So that means we're going to find the derivative of f, which is f prime of x, plus the derivative of g, f prime of g. Okay? Because it was just addition. If it was f of x times g of x, we would use a product rule. If it was f of x divided by g of x, you would use the quotient rule, things like that. But since it's just plus, we just find the derivative of each, add them together. So now what they want us to do is plug in 1. So that means everywhere there's an x, I'm going to plug in a 1. Okay? Now, to find this guy and this guy, I need to use the table. So I'm going to use the table to figure out what f prime of 1 is. So you go to f prime. F prime is the second column when x is 1. So f prime of 1 is 1. Plus g prime of 1. You go to the third column. When x is 1, you get positive 2. So that means h prime of 1 is positive 3. Just like that. We had enough information where we didn't need, I didn't need to know what f of x equals. I didn't know what a g of x equals. Didn't need to know any of that. Okay? So let's go to example number 2. Now they want f prime of g, or h prime of 3. H prime of 3. Okay? H prime of 3 means the derivative. Well, this is what h is. It's f of x divided by g of x. So I got to use the quotient rule, yep. So the quotient rule says the bottom is going to be squared. So g of x to the second power. Then it says the low is g of x, times the derivative of the high, which is f prime of x, minus the high, f of x, times the derivative of the low, g prime of x. That's just the quotient rule. That is the quotient rule, like we've used many, many times. So now that's h prime, but they want h prime of 3. Just plug in 3 everywhere there's an x. So 3. So that means g of 3 times f prime of 3 minus f of 3 times g prime of 3. On the bottom is g of 3 squared. So now I got to go figure out what is g of 3? What is f prime of 3? What is f of 3? What is g prime of 3? What is g prime of 3 again? That's what I'm going to use the table for. So let's see, g prime of 3, or sorry, g of 3. G of 3, so everywhere I see a g of 3, going to be 2. Positive 2. Well, I have a g prime of 3 at the beginning, and I have a g prime of 3 at the bottom. So I replace g of 3 with 2. Those guys are done. F prime of 3. F prime of 3. F prime 3, negative 1. So everywhere there's an F prime 3, I'm going to write a negative 1. Well, there's only one. Right there. Minus. F of 3, F of 3. There's F of 3 is positive 1. Everywhere there's an F of 3, put a positive 1. The last thing, G prime of 3. G prime of 3, positive 1. Order of operations. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2, minus 1 times 1 is 1, and then the bottom is 2 squared, which is 4. So you get negative 3 over 4. So h prime of 3 is negative 3 over 4. That's essentially what we're doing, okay? We're doing the same rules that we've done before, but the only difference is we just use the F and G's and H's, things like that. Okay? Okay, so now in example number 3, we got a new table. And we need to find H of 3 for all of them. So for A and B, we need to find H of 3. So the first thing I got to do is find the derivative of this guy. What am I going to do to find the derivative? I can use the quotient rule. I can use the quotient rule. Low d high times high d low over low squared. You can do that. Another one is you can raise this up here. You can move it up here. You could rewrite it like this. 1 times g of 2x to the negative 1 power, and use the chain rule. To me, it doesn't matter which one. You're going to get the same answer. Since most of you guys are comfortable with the quotient rule, we'll just use the quotient rule. Okay? So the bottom squared. G of 2x squared. Low times the derivative of the high. Well, what's the derivative of the high? 0. Minus the high times the derivative of the low. How do I find the derivative of the low? What am I going to use to find the derivative of the low? The answer is power rule, product rule, quotient rule, chain rule. So how am I going to find the derivative of this guy? Chain rule. Yep. It's not multiplication. It's not division. 2x is inside of g. That's the chain rule. So you find the outside. So the outside is g. So the derivative of g is just g prime. Rewrite 2x. Chain. Now find the derivative of the inside.
2.
Positive 2. That's the derivative of the bottom.
Because it's 3, we're doing 2 times 3.
So now, yeah. So now we got to plug in 3 everywhere because it says they want h of 3. H prime of 3, that's what they want. They told us at the very beginning. Find the values of h prime of 3. So everywhere there's an x, write a 3. G, 2 times x. Well, instead of 2 times x, it's just 2 times 3. It's not 23, it's 2 times because it's 2x. 2x is 2 times x times 0 minus 1 times g prime of 2 times x again. Well, instead of 2 times x, it's 2 times 3 times 2. The bottom is another 2x. So instead of 2 times x, it's 2 times 3 squared. Before I use the tables, I got to figure out what 2 times 3 is. So it's 2 times 3.
6.
Last time I checked, it was 6. So now I can go to the table. Go to the table. What's g of 6?
-2.
Negative 2 times 0 minus 1 times g prime of 6. Go to the table.
5.
What is g prime of 6? Positive 5 times 2 g of 6 was negative 2. We said that earlier. So you're just going to put a negative 2 in there. Negative 2 times 0 is 0. Negative 10 over 4, which equals negative 5 over 2. These are free response questions. You'll see these in free response. They like to use these things in free response quite a bit, where they're using these. They want to know if you know the rules. They want to know if you know how to use a table. They want to know if you know how to read a graph. The last ones we're going to do is read graphs. Okay, so you'll see, big hint, these are the types of problems you will see on free response. Okay, you won't have any multiple choice, table multiple choice. Mostly free response.
Are we going to do this with trig functions too?
Yes, you can do it with trig functions too. Yeah, we'll do it, yeah. You can absolutely do it with any function we've had so far, you can do it with, yeah. Okay? Okay, so B. Before I can even use the table, I got to find this guy.
Turn the power into a negative or into a 1/2 power.
There you go. Turn the power into a 1/2. So on the quiz, you guys had a problem like this. It was either x squared or x, I can't remember, minus x sine of x. And it said find the derivative. Not a lot, but some people miss this. This is kind of like this. What am I going to use to find the derivative?
Quotient rule.
Quotient, not the quotient rule,
I know.
product rule. Product rule, right? Product rule. A lot of you forgot, not a lot of you, like I said, when I say a lot, I don't mean a lot, but forgot to use the product rule. I'm going to have to use the product rule in there too. Okay? So before that though, I have an outside and an inside. Before I even get to the multiplication, I have to deal with the outside function, the green. 1/2 to the front. This was another one. I saw a few people miss this. They put the wrong power. What power is going to be there?
Negative 1/2.
Yeah. I have people putting crazy things instead of negative 1/2. You're just subtracting a whole power. Now, times chain. Now, in the yellow, I can use the product rule. Product rule says the first one times, I'm going to use parentheses here just because it's not needed, but just because. The derivative of the second plus the derivative of the first. Well, what is the derivative of the first in yellow? 1, right? 1 times the second. That's the derivative. The only other thing I have to do is put a 3 everywhere there's a x. So I have 1/2. Everywhere there's an x, I put a 3. 3 times f of 3, negative 1/2 power. 3 times f prime of 3 plus 1 times f of 3. Finish. You don't need me to finish. You guys can do the rest. There's no more calculus left. F of 3 is 1. F prime of 3 is negative 3. F of 3 is still 1. Now it's just PEMDAS, order of operations. Do parentheses first. So I get 3 to the negative 1/2. Times, let's see, negative 9 plus 1. So I get 3 to the negative 1/2 times negative 8. What does a negative 1/2 mean? Power. Negative 1/2 power
You
mean?
move it to the bottom and you square it.
Square root it. It means there's going to be a square root, but on the bottom. So I get negative 8 times 2 over the square root of 3. Divide by 2. I get 4, negative 4 over the square root of 3. Now I know you're not supposed to leave roots on the bottom, but for this one, we're okay. Just leave it like that. In a math 3 or yeah, I would change that. If this was math 3 or math 3 trig honors, I'd focus on that, but I'm not really concerned about. If that's the only mistake you made was leaving a root on the bottom, I'm okay with that. It's not really a mistake in my mind. Okay. All right, let's go to the back. So what I want you to do now is I want you to do example 4, A, B, C, and D. And if you can do E, do E. I want you to do A, B, C, and D And if you can, like I said, E if you're comfortable with, do it. But you should be able to do A, B, C, and D. Okay, I want you to do that right now. The only difference with letter E is this is a chain rule problem. A, B, you just use the power rule. C, you're going to use the product rule. D, you're going to use the quotient rule, like we did on the front. E is just it's a chain rule problem. So chain rule says find the derivative of the outside. Well, the derivative of the outside is something squared. Something squared, so that means 2 comes in front. Subtract a power. Times the derivative of the yellow, which is just f prime of x. So c prime of 2 means everywhere there's an x, put a 2. So f of 2 is 4. F prime of 2 is negative 1. Multiply straight across, you get negative 8. Okay. And then the last 2 examples, the only difference between 5 and 6 and the rest is they don't give you a table. Well, you can make a table. There's no rule saying you can't make a table. They just don't give you a table. Okay? So number 5 says f of negative 2 is negative 1. So f of x, when x is negative 2, the answer is negative 1. F prime of negative 2, so f prime of x at negative 2 is positive 6. Okay. Here's g of x. I need to write an equation of the tangent line where x equals negative 2. Well, to write an equation of a tangent line, first thing I need is a slope. How do I get a slope?
By figuring out the derivative of g of x.
Dear derivative, right? Derivative means slope. Derivative equals slope. So I got to find the derivative of g of x. Okay. What am I going to use to find the derivative? Which other rules am I going to use?
The quotient rule?
Not the product rule, yeah, product rule because it's multiplication, right? It's multiplication. So product rule says the first one is x squared minus 2 times the derivative of the second. What's the derivative of f of x?
F prime of x?
F just f prime of x, yeah. Since I don't know what f of x is, that's the best I can do. Plus the first times the derivative of the second. What's the derivative of the first? What's the derivative of x squared minus 2?
2x.
Just 2x, yep. So I need to find the slope of the tangent line when x is negative 2. So everywhere there's an x, I'm going to plug in a negative 2. Negative 2. Negative 2. Negative 2. Negative 2 squared is 4. 4 minus 2 times f prime of negative 2,
Which is 6.
which is positive 6, plus f of negative 2, which is negative 1, times 2 times negative 2, negative 4. So I get negative 2 times 6 plus negative 4 times negative 1. Negative 12 plus positive 4. Wait, did I do something wrong here?
Yeah, that should be a positive too.
Yeah, it should be positive 2, right? Yeah. Sorry. 4 minus 2 is 2.
16
So it should be 16, yeah.
is the slope, and then you plug in negative 2 into the original equation,
Mhm.
y.
So that's my slope. That's going to go there. I already know what x is. They told me x is equal to negative 2.
So it'll be plus 2.
So it's going to be minus a negative, which is positive 2, right? And then y, so the last question is, how am I going to figure out y?
Plug in negative 2 to the original.
There you go. Plug it into the original
Which gives you
equation.
negative 2
Let's see. So plug in g of negative 2.
again. Negative 2 squared minus 2
Yep, negative 2 squared minus 2
times negative 1.
times f of negative 2, yeah, which would be negative 1, yeah. So I get 4 minus 2 times negative 1. 2 times negative 1, which equals negative 2. There you go. That is a great example of a problem, of a free response problem. I've seen stuff like that. Sometimes they give you a table, sometimes you need to create the table, but they'll give you a g of x and they'll want you to figure out the equation of the tangent line. Big hint. That's one that you see quite a bit for free response. Okay. Last one. Last one, we're done. No tables. We have graphs. I have a graph of f and a graph of g. Well, aren't tables graphs without the dots, right? That's all they are. Like these guys up here, these tables, they're just points on the graph. So essentially, this is a table. They're just written as a graph. I have dots on here, right? F of negative 3 is 1. F of 3 is negative 4. F of 9 is positive 2, so on and so forth. Okay, so it's a big table. So I got to find h prime of 4. So they told me h of x equals f of x over g of x. So the first thing I need to find is h prime of x. How do I find h prime of x?
By putting using the quotient rule.
Quotient rule. It's division, so it's the quotient rule. Low squared. So low times the derivative of the high minus the high times the derivative of the low. They want me to find h prime of 4. Everywhere there's an x, you're going to put a 4. G of 4.
Negative 3.
F prime of 4.
Would that be the same point?
No, we'll talk about it, yeah. Some of these are going to be a little different because we got to use the graph. G of 4 squared. Okay, so let's do this again like we did. G of 4. That means on graph G, when x is 4,
Negative 3.
-3. It looks like -3. Yeah, it looks like -3. So -3 times, got that one done, f prime of 4. I know f of 4. F of 4 is like -3 as well, right? But it's not asking for the y value, right? F of 4 means the y value when x equals 4. What does f prime of 4 mean?
Derivative.
The derivative. And what is derivative synonymous with? What is derivative synonymous with? Anytime you see the word derivative, you should always think slope. So what's the slope when x equals 4? So go to that dot. Right there. What is the slope of the line it's on?
1/1.
Looks like you go up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. Just positive 1. The slope is positive 1. So if the slope is positive 1, that's what this is going to be right here. That's why they love to put these problems as free response, because they need you to put it all together. What does f prime mean? If I don't have f prime, how can I figure it out? Use the slope. That's what it is. It's just the slope. So now f of 4. F of 4. F of 4 is just the y value. That's -3. G prime of 4. G prime of 4. That's going to be the slope when g is 4, let's see. That red dot there. That red dot is when g is 4. What's the slope of that line that it's a part of?
1.
Up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. The slope is 1 again. And then we said g of 4 is -3, so it's going to be -3 squared. Done. Multiply. -3 minus -3 divided by 9. -3 plus 3, 0 over 9. 0 on top of a fraction, it's equal to 0. So what is, the question was, what is h prime of 4? 0. Okay. Tables, graphs, read them, you read them the same way. Like I said, these are the kinds of problems they will ask you on free response questions. These are the types. Okay? So tomorrow we're going to do some practice on this. Once you get a hang of this, this is pretty mild compared to what we've been doing. Because you don't have the big, ugly equations that you have to worry about. Like that and like that. There's no, it's just f of x, g of x. Okay? All right.